Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Have you ever been in a situation where you really had to be alert? Maybe you're driving somewhere you've never been before. You don't know where you're going. You're trying to find a particular address, and so you're being very alert in which road you're on, where you need to turn, looking at the address signs, and you're focused. You're alert on what you're doing. Or maybe you played a particular sport that required a certain amount of focus and concentration so that you could be successful in that particular sport. I know here on my property we have quite a few rattlesnakes, and so when I'm walking out in the pasture, I'm very alert and I'm watching the ground and I'm making sure that there's no snakes in my path so I don't accidentally step on a rattlesnake or something like that. We all know what that feels like. We all know what it means like to be alert, to be attentive, to be watchful. When it comes to spiritual things, we also know the importance of being alert. We know that there are spiritual forces that are working against us that would try to rob us of our faith and cause us to lose faith and to lose heart and to maybe perhaps fall into temptation and rebel against God. In Ephesians chapter 6, in verse 11, it says, "Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." There is these foes that we are up against, these rulers, powers, world forces of darkness, the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. There are these forces that are trying to work against us in our spiritual life. Peter, the Apostle Peter, talked about this in connection to Satan. He says in verse 8 of 1 Peter chapter 5, "Be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." And so the idea is that because there is so much spiritual activity going on around us, that we need to constantly be on the alert, constantly being focused and attentive and paying attention to our walk before the Lord, the various circumstances that come our way, being careful in the way that we handle those situations, just constantly just being watchful. But someone might say, how is this possible? Being alert when it comes to maybe sports or when it comes to driving or walking out in a pasture, you can be focused because you have things to look at. You have things to focus your eyes on. If you're driving, you're focusing on the road signs or you're focusing on your map. If you're in sports, you're focused on what the other team is doing or where the ball is at any given moment. If you're walking in the pasture, your eyes can focus on the ground and focus on the grass and try to look for dangerous situations. But when it comes to spiritual things, we can't see what's going on around us in the spirit realm. And so how is it that we can be focused when we can't even look at and see what's going on? Well, our reading today helps us with that in Colossians chapter 4. This is what the Apostle Paul tells the church at Colossae, and of course tells us by result as well. It says, "Devote yourselves to prayer, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving." There he says to devote ourselves to prayer, being alert or keeping alert in it. Prayer is the way that we keep ourselves spiritually alert. Yes, it's true, we can't see what's going on around us. We don't have things to physically fix our eyes on to stay focused. But prayer is a way in which our spirit remains focused. It's the way that our spirits remain focused on God, in communication with God, in communion with God. And so as we are attentive to prayer and being diligent in prayer, it allows our spirits to be alert. And as a result, our whole being to be alert. As we're praying to God, as we're offering up our lives before Him, as we are engaged in prayer in the various situations and circumstances we find ourselves in, it keeps our minds focused on God, and it keeps our minds focused on the spiritual things, and it causes us to set our mind on the Spirit and be attentive in that way. And so we should be attentive at all times. As we read in 1 Peter chapter 5, we know that the devil is lurking about, seeking someone whom he may devour, like a lion. You know, if you were in an area that you knew there was a lion there, would you not be alert, looking around, being attentive, being focused, making sure you didn't cross paths with the lion? The same thing is true spiritually. And so it makes it all the more important for us to be diligent in prayer and being focused in prayer. And I know some would say, well, that's a very difficult thing to do. It's very hard to keep one's mind continually in prayer and keeping one's heart continually in the posture of prayer. But that just shows just how important it is. You see, Satan can try to directly tempt us to do something, but what would be more effective for him would be to first get our minds off of God, get our minds off of spiritual things, to cause us to no longer be in prayer, but to become sluggish and to not be alert. If he can get us in that state first, then when he comes in subtly with a temptation, with a situation that might cause us to lose faith or to sin against God, then he'll be more successful in doing it if he first gets our minds off of the Lord and gets our minds out of prayer. And so the very fact that it's difficult to pray should show us that that's probably the enemy's primary place of attack, is to keep our minds distracted, keep our minds on earthly things, on worldly things, to keep our minds on anything except for God, and to keep our minds doing anything except for praying to God. And so, yes, it will be difficult, but it's very necessary. And when we find our minds wandering, when we find ourselves kind of just becoming sluggish and not alert, we should stop in our tracks right there and refocus, recenter our hearts on Him. If it takes a moment, a few seconds of silence, of breathing, whatever it takes, just to quiet our hearts, to get us back in the prayer posture once again, we should do it. That way we can remain alert, we can remain attentive and watchful, and so that we can live the life pleasing to God, and to have victory over temptation and the allurements of the world and the desires of the flesh. It's a difficult thing, but it's a very necessary thing, and it's something worth our endeavor. So with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.